I was born and raised and educated in Canada, and I did not meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. But I was in fact, my parents make the point that as soon as I could talk, and I wasn't really talking until I was 5 years of age, but as soon as I could talk, I was asking questions, and in particular questions about the universe. They claim I was kind of a born scientist. And I remember when I was 7 years of age, asking my parents the question, are the stars hot? And they assured me that the stars were very hot. But of course, I wanted to know why they were so hot. And so they told me to go to the library. And that's what I did, and I read every book I could find on astronomy and physics in the children's section of the Vancouver Public Library. And when I had done that and read all the books that were there, they gave me a pass to the adult section. Eventually I wound up getting a pass to the university library. And it was at the age of 8 that I knew that my future career would lie in astrophysics. And from the age of 8 onwards, that was kind of the passion of my life, was pursuing astrophysics. By the time I was in my teenage years, I was beginning a study on what's called cosmology, the origin and structure of the universe. And at that time in the 1960s, there was all these debates about is the universe steady state? Is it oscillating or reincarnating like the Hindus and Buddhists would claim that it is? Or is it a big bang? And there are other descriptions too. But as I went into that study, it became clear to me that the astronomical observations were heavily favoring the Big Bang explanation and disproving the other explanations. And Big Bang cosmology really arose out of Einstein's theory of general relativity. Which tells us that the universe is continuously expanding and traceable back to a beginning. And reasoning along the same lines as Albert Einstein, I figured if the universe indeed has a beginning, there must be a beginner. And I came to that conclusion at age 16, and from this 16 onwards, I never doubted the existence of God. So that part was taken care of. And I had the good fortune of going to a high school where we had people from all different cultures and religions. I did not meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. And therefore, when I began to talk to people about how I discovered that this beginner or God exists, I got exposed to a lot of different people from different religious perspectives. I did not meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. And starting at age 17, I decided to do a study of the different religions of the world to see if any of them could possibly be a communication from this cosmic beginner. I did not meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. And what they tell you in science is you should always begin with the easy problems first and leave the most difficult to the end. So on purpose, well, actually I began with the philosophers. I knew that Immanuel Kant, that the great German philosopher, was also the father of modern cosmology. So I looked at what he had to write, looked at Descartes and a number of other philosophers, and what I recognized is they thought of space and time as being absolutes that eternally existed. And I knew that Big Bang cosmology disproved that. So I said, these guys really aren't the right way. Then I began to look at what the Hindus had to say. And the Hindus speak about the reincarnating universe, which was a popular idea in the 1960s amongst astronomers, that the universe has multiple beginnings rather than just one beginning, where it would grow from this beginning and then shrink, and then there would be this rebirth. But the Hindus in their Vedas claim that the period of time between the two beginnings would be exactly 4.32 billion years. And even back in the 1960s, we knew that number was definitely wrong. The universe was older than 4.32 billion years. And we also were able to demonstrate that the universe was so entropic, in other words, so efficient in radiating heat from hot bodies to cold bodies, it would allow no possibility for any kind of rebound or bounce mechanism. So at age 17, I recognized that the truth of the universe did not come through Hinduism. And therefore, Hinduism's message could not be compatible with the one that began the universe or created the universe. And I came to that conclusion at age 16, and from this 16 onwards, I never doubted the existence of God. Now, in the public high school I attended, the dominant religion outside of atheism and agnosticism was Buddhism. Our high school was 80% Asians. And they told me I needed to look at what the Buddhists had to say, so I did that. But I discovered that the Buddhists borrow everything that they teach about cosmology, the origin and structure of the universe, directly from the Hindus. And I said, therefore, the truth is not in Buddhism either. Then I picked up the Quran, and when I began to go through the Quran, I noticed kind of a common denominator here. That the Quran, like the Buddhist writings and the Hindu writings I was been exposed to, were highly repetitious. They kept repeating themselves, and the language was vague. And I guess what concerned me most of all, there was this appeal to intellectual snobbery. If you're one of the great enlightened ones, you'll be able to understand the meaning of this text. Otherwise, you're out of luck. And I said, that's not what I see in the record of nature. When I look out at the universe, I see a revelation there that is clear and direct and ready and open for investigation and testing. And that bothered me that when I went into these other holy books, I didn't see that direct communication. or that invitation to put things to the test. Now, there was one fellow in our high school classroom who was of the Baha'i faith, and what he told me is that in Baha'i, what they do is that they take the kernels of truth from the world's great religions and put them together into a consistent package. So this is great, show me what you got. And as I spent a few days looking at the Baha'i teachings, I went back to my friend and said, well, from what I can tell, what the Baha'i have done is to borrow the great mistakes in the world's religions and to put them together into an inconsistent package, and he wound up leaving the Baha'i faith. Now, when I told you earlier that I didn't meet Christians until I was 27 years of age, what I meant by that was to get close enough to a Christian where I could have a conversation on some spiritual matter. That did not happen until I was 27. And that's because in Canada, there just aren't as many Christians as there are here in the United States. They're harder to meet. However, I did get to see two Christians from 30 feet away when I was 11 years old. And these were two businessmen that came into our public school classroom and put a box on our teacher's desk. And in that box were Gideon Bibles. I did not meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. And we're all invited to come forward and take one if we wanted one. And I still carry around with me that Gideon Bible I picked up when I was 11 years of age. Now, I didn't read it until I was 17. It stayed untouched on my bookshelf for 6 years. And I came to that conclusion at age 16, and from this 16 onwards, I never doubted the existence of God. And in hindsight, I'm rather glad that I did not pick it up until I was 17, because those Gideons gave me what we would call a foreign language edition of the Bible. It's King James English. And at age 11, I think I would have been quite intimidated. But one of the benefits of a Canadian public education is starting in grade 7, they saturate you with the plays of William Shakespeare. And I had to memorize literally over 1,000 lines from the different plays of William Shakespeare. So by the time I was 17, I was fluent in King James English. And as I began to go through this book, I noticed immediately how different it was from all the other holy books that undergird the religions of the world. Namely, that it was clear, it was direct, and it was specific. Unlike these other holy books, I didn't see a lot of repetition or vagueness. It mentions places, points of history and science and geography, things that could easily be put to the test. And I think what encouraged me as a young scientist is as I began to go through this book, I found repeated invitations to put this to the test. For example, we have in the writings of the Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, everything must be tested. Hold fast to that which is good. And again, this is repeated throughout the Bible. The Bible is the only holy book I picked up that ever had this invitation to objectively put what you're reading to the test. And, I began on page 1. I thought, I want to get the Genesis 1. By the way, the Gideons did not give me anything except the Psalms, Proverbs, and the New Testament. So I wound up getting a complete Bible, started in page 1. And I went through Genesis chapter 1. I found the scientific method. Now, I've been trained in Canada from grade 1 forward. Every year of school, we were taught the scientific method. But they never told us where the scientific method came from. And when I opened up Genesis 1, I found the elements of the scientific method built right into the text. And this had a huge impression upon me as a 17-year-old studying science. And let me just review for you what I found in Genesis chapter 1. First of all, the step 1 of the scientific method is to make no attempt to interpret until you first establish the frame of reference. And so we need to identify the frame of reference. In fact, Galileo said at his trial that the biggest mistake you can make in Bible interpretation is to fail to identify the frame of reference. And you say, where do you see that? Well, notice Genesis 1:2, before you get into the 6 creation days. It tells us that the Spirit of God is hovering over the surface of planet Earth. So it tells us that we are to interpret the sequence of the events in the 6 creation days from the perspective of an observer on the surface of planet Earth. So it's not looking down on the planet, it's being on the planet, looking up at the clouds and looking across the surface. And that makes a huge difference in how you interpret the events of the 6 creation days. Now, step 2 of the scientific method is to determine the initial conditions. Make no attempt to interpret until you establish those initial conditions. What else do you see in Genesis 1:2? The Spirit of God is hovering over the surface of the waters, and it's empty of life, unfit for life. The water covers the whole surface of the planet, and it's dark upon the surface of the waters. So those are the 4 initial conditions. And then you go through the 6 creation days. Now, as you go through those 6 creation days, the 3rd step of the scientific method that we teach our students, do not try to interpret when you do your experiment or make your observations, or in this case, read the biblical text. Simply note what happens, where it happens, when, the order, and then you write that down in a notebook. And when you're all done, well, you want to note the final conditions. And having noted those final conditions, now and only now are you free to make an interpretation. But it's an interpretation you make lightly. And then you want to test that interpretation with other observations and experiments. And this is one of the beautiful things I found about the Bible, is that it's loaded with many creation accounts. What you find in the other holy books might be one creation account or two, but in the Bible we have 25 different accounts of creation. Now, having done that, kind of looked at that scientific method outline, by the way, the Bible follows that pattern every time it describes a sequence of physical events. And it wasn't until I was 27 years of age and began to read the writings of the Scottish theologian Thomas Torrance and the 28-volume set his Scottish academic press put out on science and the Christian faith, that I discovered that the scientific method really came directly from the Bible. That was the birth of the scientific revolution. It's no accident that the scientific revolution came out of the Reformation and Western Europe. It was Bible scholars reading the Bible, discovering this method, and applying it to their scientific research, and that was the birth of the scientific revolution. So it does come straight from the pages of the Bible. Now, following this biblical method, so the Bible tells us everything must be put to the test, but it also tells you how to put it to the test.